What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back on the video. It's Saturday. It's time to look back at the previous week, talk about the most important news out of training camps. I have to record these on Thursday each week, so any massive news that drops between Thursday and upload, I will pin as a comment, so you can check that out. Anything smaller, we'll talk about in the videos throughout next week or next week's video for this one. Gonna be a very long one, so sit back, hit the like button. Let's start things off with the Atlanta Falcons, where we have basically nothing. We talked about the Rondale Moore injury last week. That's going to help Ray McCloud. It's going to help Carlos Washington. Ultimately, unless you're in a 16-team league with pretty deep benches, you don't really care about those two. You want Bijan, London, Pitts, Cousins, maybe Mooney in the later rounds if you think he's going to develop into something. Wouldn't worry too much beyond those options, again, unless you're in a 16-team league. In Arizona, the drumbeat continues for Dortch and Michael Wilson. I'll be honest, I don't know exactly how good they're going to be this season. Like, I can't tell if the Arizona beat reporters are just in love with everyone, and every time someone makes a catch, they're like, wow, greatest thing I've ever seen. I will still say, I've always liked Greg Dortch. I've always been so surprised that they haven't given him more snaps. He's clearly a good wide receiver. He clearly commands targets. He's not going to go out there and outproduce even Trey McBride. But like Trey McBride, Marvin Harrison Jr., those are clearly the top two pass catchers on this team. I think, honestly, these reports are more just positive for Kyler. If Kyler can stay healthy this season and clearly now has a much upgraded receiving core than from what he had last season, he's going to be really good. He also wasn't mobile last season. If he's healthy now, can stay healthy, and you've got, Marvin Harrison Jr. with McBride is a great duo to have. But if you can also kind of throw in a developed Michael Wilson, Greg Dortch commanding targets out of the slot, like, I don't know. I think he's a great value as an eighth quarterback off boards. In Baltimore, we've got more hype around Isaiah Likely, a little bit about Owen Wright too. I don't really think the Ravens have a huge plan for their wide receiver 3 spot. So I buy into the reports that Likely is going to be used more this season with Mark Andrews, because you can either run 12 personnel, so you can have 2 tight ends on the field, or you can start in 12 personnel, change that into, motion it out to 11 personnel, use one of Likely or Andrews in the slot. So I actually do believe them when they say they're going to use Likely more. Either way, though, like, more, meaning more than he was last season when you had Mark Andrews healthy, more doesn't mean he's going to be like a top 7 tight end this season. Like, I still don't think he's going to be that amazing. Still don't think I would target Likely as anything more than like a pretty late round flyer. Someone as like, your second or third tight end on Underdog. If you double dipped late and you want to just like stash Likely in case of an injury, that's really all that I would look for there. Speaking of Mark Andrews, though, he was in a car accident the other day. Seems to be totally fine, thank goodness. But keep an eye out on that. But again, all reporting on that seems like he's going to be totally fine. Back to Owen Wright. This is not me saying draft him. It's more me saying, maybe Mitchell will be something when he's healthy. But Rasheen Ali does not look very good. Odds are Owen Wright's not actually that good either. Derrick Henry is just going to get as many touches as he can possibly handle. 100% of the goal line work. Like, that's my main takeaway from Owen Wright getting hype, is that Derrick Henry is going to be a monster this season. In Buffalo, James Cook has had some fumbling issues in camp. They're saying right now it's not going to really impact anything. It's more that, like, if he's having these issues and it continues during camp, it continues into the regular season, maybe we start to see Ray Davis get a little bit more run. Cook has also had a few pass protection concerns. Seems like that's an area where maybe Ray Davis could be slightly better at. Overall, I'd say use this a reason to just be a little bit more cautious with James Cook. I still think he's a good pick, not someone I target a ton, but I think he's still a good pick. I would just make sure I don't reach for him, right? Don't be reaching around ahead for James Cook, because we do have some of these concerns. He goes in that classic dead zone of like, there is definitely a chance that he fumbles the ball in week 2, that he misses something in pass protection on 3rd down, and they just happen to rotate Ray Davis in a little bit more. We already know there's going to be basically no goal line opportunities for either one of these running backs, because Josh Allen is going to run everything in. So if James Cook started to lose some of these snaps, it would be very bad for him in fantasy. So keep it in mind. don't just straight up avoid James Cook. But again, I would use this as a reason to not be super overweight, super aggressive in targeting him. In Carolina, we still don't have a timeline for Jonathan Brooks, but a beat reporter kind of threw out sometime in October as an estimate. That kind of matches up the hopefully week 3 or 4 guess we had last week. I still expect a month. That's I think what we should be generally expecting right now. Definitely a chance he opens up on IR, misses the first 4 weeks, comes back in week 5. Don't think he's going to get a lot of touches right away, but will slowly be ramped up as the season goes on. They have a week 11 bye. So my guess right now, and again, this is just purely me guessing, but what I would imagine will happen is he returns sometime in like week 4, week 5, maybe week 3, but week 4, week 5, let's guess he returns in. Every week, he's slowly involved a little bit more until the week 11 bye, and then he's featured or effectively featured from week 12 on. To me, that is absolutely worth taking in round 8 of a 12-team league. That's where he's going right now, especially if you have an IR spot. If you have an IR spot, you can just chuck him into the IR immediately, keep him there for multiple weeks. It's almost like it was a free ad, right? A free stash for you there. Then in the second half of the season, which is obviously way more valuable than the first half because it contains the fantasy playoffs, all you got to do is make the playoffs. If he's going to be peaking during that time and you can make the playoffs, because like you didn't spend a 3rd round pick on him, right? If you're spending a 3rd round pick and some dude who's going to miss, basically the first half of the season, you can't use him as much, that's a problem. In round 8, you've got 7 picks before that you can figure out. You've got a bunch of picks after that. You don't actually need, if you just like remove your round 8 pick, your team's not going to change all that much. I don't know. I think it makes him a really, really good stash. I am still on him. I am very glad his ADP is dropping. Also, a quick note, if you guys happen to hear any like extreme thunder or something like that, the heavens have opened up. I have to do this recording now, so we're just going to see what happens. Hopefully you can't hear it too much, but yeah, it is quite dark outside and raining quite good, and there's a lot of thunder and lightning. Anyways, if you hear that, that's all it is. So, in Chicago, up next. I watched episode 1 of Hard Knocks, learned nothing, so there's that. That was completely useless. Hopefully episode 2 is a little bit better. In other news, Keenan Allen may have gained some weight. He's listed at 211. A bunch of people out there saying he's 230 pounds now. That would be pretty massive and potentially a problem for a 32-year-old wide receiver who was already slow before that. Personally, I think it's a lot to do about nothing. Like, there's no way Keenan Allen's fat now. Like, that's just not a thing. There's no way he's actually as slow as people are saying. He's never been a fast wide receiver, right? Like, it's not like Tyreek Hill's going out there and people are like, wait, is Tyreek Hill slow now? Like, that was never Keenan Allen's gain. I think he had, don't quote me on this, but like a bottom 5 percentile 40 time. Like, he's not fast, right? He wins through elite route running. That's not going to go away. What I'll say is this. He's 32 years old. There's a very real chance that he's basically just their slot receiver this season, and that when they go to 2 wide receiver sets, it's a Dunze on the outside with DJ Moore. That would be what I'm concerned with. I'd be more concerned that a Dunze is just awesome, that he takes a larger target share than people think, because we know DJ Moore is going to be very involved, and that's why maybe Keenan Allen disappoints, not because people think he's 230 pounds now and that he's fat. Like, I wouldn't care about that. I also think people are kind of overblowing this Bears' first preseason game, the usage of DeAndre Swift. Like, we'll see what happens in their second game, but people are like nonstop talking about how Herbert got all these touches with the first team offense, that he had 9 touches, only 2 for Swift. They're like victory lapping here. I really think people need to stop reading too much into the first preseason game. Like, maybe they're showcasing Herbert for a trade. Maybe they know Swift's the number 1, and so they're like, why would we keep putting him out there for a bunch of touches? Or maybe, what I think is most likely, they just didn't want to get him hurt, right? One of his 2 touches went for 42 yards. It's a preseason game, right? They don't need to have him out there getting a ton of touches. And on a 42-yard reception, I guess it was, you're just opening yourself up to using that hamstring a little bit more often, and they don't want something to go astray. So I feel like, honestly, that was more of it, that they were like, if this kid has 45 yards on the first 4 plays of the game, we don't need to keep giving him the football. I really don't think people should be victory lapping DeAndre Swift not being involved this season. Again, he had 45 yards in the first 4 plays of the game. In Cincy, as of recording this, I don't know. Jamar Chase is not practicing. I don't know what's going to come of this situation. You've also got people debating still Burton versus Iosivas. On that last one, I think Iosivas is going to open the season as the starter. That Burton will still mix in, and that it basically is going to come down to who's more productive. Like, I think they're going to throw them both out there in game time. Again, Iosivas will probably be the starter to start the season. He'll probably have more playing time, but they're just going to evaluate who's more productive, who fits the offense a little bit better, who's just developing quicker, and they'll go with that player. So I think both are just worth shots later on. Whichever one you think it is, they're both going in basically like the last round of a redraft league. So take a flyer on either one of them if you want to. As for Chase, I have the same take of Chase as I do with Lamb. I would be shocked if these two contract situations last their way into the season and we get holdouts. Like, these are two massive parts of their respective offenses, and neither team has any chance of doing anything this season in terms of like playoffs on, right? Because both these teams are still going to be fine in the regular season, but both of these teams need these wide receivers to produce for them to do anything in the playoffs. So, you know, for a fact, they're going to pay them at some point. So figure it out. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know why these teams are not just paying them. You're going to do it at some point anyways. Just do it. It does get frustrating because, number one, we don't know where to rank them in fantasy. But number two, it's like, as you kind of don't play in camp longer and longer, you get into potential, like, you know, remember Josh Jacobs situations where, like, he was very, very slow to start that season. You get into situations where people just get injured at a little bit higher rate because they're not out there in training camp. You just throw them out there into week one if you get the deal done, you know, a couple days before the season starts. And we're like, oh, great, they're going to be fine. But, like, no, they haven't practiced at all in training camp. So it's a concern. I'm still drafting both of those players like normal. If we get into, like, August 25th, August 27th, and we still don't know, that's when I'm going to start to be like, okay, well, we do know with Justin Jefferson. We do know with Tyreek Hill. We do know with Bijan Robinson, with Breece Hall. Maybe we should lean towards those players. As of right now, I'm still fine drafting Chase, drafting CeeDee Lamb. In Cleveland, we don't have much. Watson's going to play in the final preseason game, which is, I believe, like August 24th, 25th, somewhere around there. A little bit closer to week one than I'd personally feel comfortable with seeing him play for the first time. So not ideal, but I guess nice that he's going to play in the preseason. Also, Tillman's apparently looked really good. There's a world where he makes into 3 wide receiver sets over Elijah Moore. Overall, nothing this week has happened to where we should see a difference in Cleveland players' ADPs. I guess one, Stephania Bell went on the ETR podcast, talked about Nick Chubb. Didn't give any, like, we already knew everything with Chubb. We know he's going to start the season slow. Maybe not even start the season. We know he's probably never going to get up to like 25 touches in a game. Basically, all of that was confirmed. She did say one note that I thought was interesting. She talked to Jerome Ford and basically asked him, kind of talked about preparing for the season. It seems like he is preparing to be their lead running back for a chunk of the year. I think that's notable, and just being like, if you start off hero, you start off RB0, he's absolutely a name you need to be heavily considering in the later rounds, because he's going to have considerably more value over the first like month, maybe 2 months of the season than where you're actually taking him in draft. So I thought that part was notable. I wouldn't want Ford in a league where I drafted like 3 running backs in the first 5 rounds. At that point, it's like, well, I'm not starting him. You know, maybe I could use him as trade bait or something like that, but it's like I'm not actually getting this value for him. But in a league you start hero, start RB0, you need to be drafting Jerome Ford. I'm still good drafting Chubb. It's very ideal, though, with IR spots. If you have IR spots, then it's definitely better to draft Chubb. In Dallas, don't have anything. I already went over my CeeDee Lamb thoughts. That was basically everything for Dallas. I think he's going to get paid. I think it's going to happen. I'm hoping it doesn't happen into the season, but we will see. If you're drafting this weekend, I'm drafting as normal. If we get to next weekend, I'm starting to get a slightly bit concerned. In Denver, they have 1 million wide receivers, and it truly seems like they're going to use all of them. And Devon Veal is also out playing Troy Franklin. You cannot draft Troy Franklin, even on like Underdog, 18 rounds. You're not drafting Troy Franklin this season. Only Denver wide receiver I've been going after is Courtland Sutton. After that, if you really want to take a shot on Mims late, you want to take a shot on like Reynolds, like Go for it. I'm not going to do that. Just Sutton in like the pick like 110 or so in a redraft league. I just wouldn't touch any of the wide receivers. In Detroit, the big news is Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs, hamstring injury. We don't know yet. So right now, Dan Campbell says should be back in week 1, but we're still a decent ways off from week 1. If he suffers a setback, if he recovers a little bit slower, does that push into week 2, week 3? We don't know. So right now, we're not anticipating this injury changing anything. I hate hamstring injuries, though. They can linger. You can suffer setbacks. He can be good to go, and all of a sudden, week 3, he re-injures it. Like, it's a problem. So I dropped him in the rankings, but he had already a pretty big lead, especially in full PPR, over JT, over Saquon, over that next tier, to where even if you drop him, he's still in that general range. Personally, if I'm drafting this weekend, I'm still drafting him in that same range. But before, in a redraft league, I was okay maybe taking him over Garrett Wilson, over A.J. Brown if you wanted that running back. I don't think at this point I would do that. I would probably still take Garrett Wilson, A.J. Brown over Jahmyr Gibbs. Big decision between like JT and Saquon. If you really want that running back early on and you're not comfortable with Gibbs, I think you can go with JT. I don't think if JT's off the board, I don't know that I would go with Saquon over Gibbs. I think at that point, I'd probably risk it. I'd still take Gibbs over Saquon. But yeah, if you want to move JT up, I'm totally fine doing that because we know he's healthy. We know he's getting 1 million touches this season. In Houston, don't have a lot to report on. CJ Stroud's been good. The passing attack's been good. Tank Dell's been good. He remains their cheapest wide receiver. We still don't have like an amazing take on who's going to be the most valuable wide receiver this season. And to me, that means draft Tank Dell because he's their latest by ADP. Cade Stover also looks really good, their rookie tight end. I still think Schultz is going to be the tight end 1 this season, but Stover's looks good enough to where I would not draft Schultz. I just don't see any sort of ceiling with Schultz. You got those 3 wide receivers. They're going to clearly command targets over him. You've got Stover kind of breathing down his neck. Like I wouldn't draft Schultz this season. Green Bay, Marshawn Lloyd not practicing. He suffered the hamstring injury in the preseason game. They said he should be good to go in week 1, but I mean, this kid was injured even before this, so he's barely practiced in camp. I don't know when he's going to come back to practice. Now he's missing even more time. I would be very surprised if he had a large role early in the season. I maintain that Josh Jacobs is one of the best picks you can make in drafts right now. A.J. Dillon, we just know who he is. So if A.J. Dillon is actually out there as the lead backup for the first month of the season, Jacobs won't be featured, but he's going to have a very strong role and he's going to be highly productive in this offense. Also, I think Jaden Reed should still be the first drafted wide receiver, but we continually get reports about how Romeo Doubs has been the best wide receiver in camp, and it's not just coming from the coaching staff. We've heard players report this, beat reporters, everyone who's talking about the situation has been talking up Romeo Doubs. Is taking a huge step forward this season. I would make it a point to get more Doubs. I've moved him up the rankings. I've been a little bit too off from the season. Haven't really drafted any Reed because this has been a worry, this wide receiver room is going to be so close in their target shares, and we truly don't know who's going to be the most valuable. Why would you take the first one? Christian Watson could easily lead this team. Romeo Doubs could easily lead this team. Why take Reed, right, if you have to draft him first among them? In Indy, definitely don't be drafting their tight ends. So Woods is the only one who we thought had some fantasy upside. There are reports that he hasn't done anything. He might not even make the team. They're going to run a massive tight end by committee. You want absolutely no part of this. Other news is that A.D. Mitchell seems to be developing nicely. There's a lot of highlight plays of him in camp. Went over this last week. Again, the Downs injury probably won't last super long into the season, but it's going to allow A.D. Mitchell to develop more quickly in camp. I think he's a very strong pick in the later rounds, especially on Underdog. Jacksonville. Christian Kirk has a minor calf injury. This just happened. He's going to be reevaluated next week, so we will see how much time he misses. If you combine that with the recent hype around Brian Thomas Jr., the fact that they opened in a 2 wide receiver set with Gabe and with Brian Thomas Jr. and not Christian Kirk, I still think Christian Kirk is the best wide receiver on this team, the one that I would want in fantasy. It's a little bit difficult to ignore the possibility that he's just not going to see the field as much, that we are overdrafting him. And my projections already right now, even factoring in that I think he's the best wide receiver in this team, already kind of think he's being overdrafted. If now I'm kind of starting to bake in this downside that maybe Brian Thomas Jr. is just better than we think, it makes him risky. It makes him someone that in a range where there's so many awesome wide receivers, I don't see a real need to go after Christian Kirk. I'm still not going after Gabe. I don't believe in his talent. I don't believe he's developed. I don't think he's that good. But Brian Thomas Jr., if you're going to draft one wide receiver on this team, make it Brian Thomas Jr. In Kansas City, the big news is obviously the Marquise Brown injury. Sternoclavicular, however you say it. Not a good injury. He's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks. Seems like it's not something that should majorly impact him as long as when he returns, it's not too early, and 4 to 6 weeks is a generally good timeline. That puts him at, like, let's just say week 2 or week 3 at returning. As long as he actually returns, he's actually good to go there. There's no like extra added risk, maybe in that first week, because again, we don't know if he returned too quickly, but assuming he like makes it back, gets hit a few times, doesn't like crumble, he should be fine. With that said, it's the same thing as AD Mitchell, right? They've said that Xavier Worthy is going to kind of fill that role while Marquise Brown is out, and that Justin Watson is going to fill in 3 wide receiver sets, which means much higher target share for everyone else. Rashee Rice, great pick. I mean, it's looking like he's not going to face suspension this season. His stock has been way up recently. But again, it's that same AD Mitchell impact for Xavier Worthy. Worthy's going to get more usage in camp, more deep looks, more development. That's going to fast track everything. And it's even more fast tracked when you're playing with Patrick Mahomes. So Rashee Rice, exceptional pick, but Worthy now becoming a much, much stronger pick in drafts. I'm still totally fine drafting Hollywood, though. Hollywood's been cratering. I drafted Hollywood, 5 hours ago at pick 90 on Underdog. So in a redraft league, that's probably closer to pick 105, 110. I think if you can get him in that general range in a 12-team league, I'm totally fine doing that. Is there risk? Certainly. But once he does return, like he's getting to a spot where you have these players who have these injuries, but you don't need them right away, right? Yeah, maybe he doesn't return until week 2, 3, 4, but you weren't going to start him. Like at his new ADP, you don't have to actually start Hollywood. I think he's still a good pick. But yeah, I think the main winners here, Rashee Rice is like a 5th round pick now. Probably not going to go that early in hometown leagues. If you're drafting this weekend, you should be drafting Rashee Rice. Rams camp, Jordan Whittington. The hype continues. I mean, I'm starting to be worried. I think there's an actual chance that not only he rotates in with Demarcus Robinson, but by the midpoint of the season, is he overtaking Demarcus Robinson 3 wide receiver sets? Like, McVay has had nothing but positive things to say about him. Beat reporters are in love with him. He was great in the first preseason game. So definitely keep an eye on this one because the wide receiver 3 on the Rams is like a valuable role in fantasy. They run 3 wide receiver sets a ton. Very few, if any, teams will run 11 personnel at a higher rate than the Rams. I don't think it's all smoke. Like, maybe the Rams have just become insane at drafting late round wide receivers or something. Don't think that he has a 6th round tag next to him and be like, oh, he can't be anything. Like, it seems like he's pretty good. One other thing to monitor, I don't think it's anything, is Stafford. Left practice on Wednesday. Again, I record this on Thursday. I don't know, check if he practiced Thursday or Friday. It was hamstring tightness. Again, I'm not that worried. Like, he's going to scramble for like 7 yards this season. So like the hamstring isn't that big of a deal for him, but confirmed that he's fine. In Chargers camp, it's not looking good for Kamani Vidal this year. Probably a lesson for people that a back still has to be good to earn a role. And I know some people actually think he's good. 90% of people who are drafting Kamani Vidal were drafting it just under the assumption that they don't like the top 2 running backs for the Chargers. They don't think they can stay healthy and that he was going to win the job and be awesome. But like the dude was going at like pick 150 on Underdog, which in redraft is what? Pick like 125, 130, purely based off being on the Chargers. There's a lot of other running backs that are on the Chargers, a lot of other running backs that could end up on the Chargers, and we still don't have an injury right now to the top 2. Like, you're not drafting Kamani Vidal. Initial depth chart, he was 6th. I think he's probably 4th, but don't draft him. Please do not draft Kamani Vidal this season. In Raiders camp, Dylan Lobb, again, I don't know how to say his last name, but Dylan Lobb, he's been struggling in pass protection. That's not great if you were a 3rd down back. Also, Joey Myers, been great, continues to be amazing. I honestly don't know what the Raiders are going to do on 3rd downs. who they're going to use more consistently. If Zamir can get any snaps on third downs, that'd be great. But I can promise you, Zamir White is going to lead this team in touches by like 100 miles. Like, he's going to have so many touches this season. Very strong pick and draft right now. Like, I've been taking a ton of him on Underdog, and that is not a platform that really benefits him. Like, a redraft league is where he would shine, not as much on Underdog, but I can't help myself. Like, I'm definitely going to target him in my redraft league. He's going to get a ton of touches. They're not going to win that many games, but in the games they do win, he's going to have like 25 carries. Like, I just think the touch floor is so significant. And if we do have a chance that he's out there in some third downs, he could shatter his ADP. But then back to Myers again. Great pick. I talked about him a lot in recent videos. He's going outside the top 50 wide receivers. He's crushing camp. Like, draft Jacoby Myers this season. In Miami, Jalen Wright looked really good in their first preseason game. McDaniels also basically said they're going to let the running backs decide, right? They're going to be like, okay, all three of you, go out there. Who's hot? Who's playing well? We're going to lean on that running back. Not amazing to hear in fantasy. And I still think that, like, you know, Achan's the most valuable. I'm still definitely wanting to draft Devon Achan this season. I'd be willing to spend a very early pick on him because he's clearly, we know he's talented. We think Wright's talented, but we know Achan is talented. We know he's very explosive. We know he's going to be highly efficient. Like, there's significant upside in Achan this season. But I think we can all envision the path to Wright breaking out and Wright being, you know, an exceptional pick in drafts. He's the 51st wide receiver off boards. He goes in the late 13th round in redraft on average. Like, he's a really, really good pick. This offense is going to be incredibly efficient. Defenses have to focus on Waddle. They have to focus on Tyreek Hill. Mostert turned 32 in April. And again, despite the last 2 years for Mostert, like, he has had trouble staying healthy in his career. Achan, obviously electric, but he struggled to stay healthy last season, struggled to do so as well in the offseason. Like, there is absolutely a world here where we get multiple weeks this season that Jalen Wright is the most productive running back on this offense, and you're getting him super late in drafts. And remember, this isn't some scrub, right? We're not doing this with commodity at all, right? Jalen Wright was one of my favorite running backs in the pre-draft process. You know, he doesn't have 99th percentile speed like Achan, but he's got 98th percentile speed. And when you adjust for height and weight, he has a higher speed score than Devon Achan. He's a very, very good fit in this offense. Again, it's not like we're taking Wright in round 5, but again, he goes in the late 13th round. I don't know. I feel like we're going to look back at this one and be like, why were we passing on him in any drafts? Like, why were we not just taking him every single time at that ADP? Because he's not going to work out all the time, but like, the upside is just so obvious that, like, I feel like maybe we're missing something here. He's a great pick. Won't work out all the time, but when it does work out, it's going to be a league winner. In Minnesota, some injuries. Jaden McCarthy, done for the season. Knee injury, knee surgery. Jordan Addison was also carted off. Seemed like that was going to be bad, but at this point right now, it seems like he's going to be okay. We're waiting for better confirmation than just O'Connell just telling us he thinks he's going to be okay. Like, I would like a little bit more clarity there. I've moved Sam Darnold up to the quarterback 20. I'd be fine taking him earlier than that. I think he's an elite target, especially on Underdog right now. On Underdog, Best Ball Mania 5, 70% through drafting, he's only on 10% of teams, projection-wise. Projected to be on 10% of teams. That's a big advantage in drafting him. Like, even if you have to reach a little bit, his advancement rate can only be so high if he's only on like half of the teams by the end of this thing, and he's probably going to be on less than half of the teams. Like, I've been saying this for a while. I'm not concerned who the starting quarterback is for the Minnesota Vikings. They have a great coaching staff, a great system, assuming Addison can play most weeks. Great skill players as well. I want a top 11 quarterback, but if I miss out on that, my rule is now grab Jared Goff and grab Sam Darnold as my double dip, and I think you can get great production streaming the both of them. In New England, the big story is how bad their offensive line is. It might be the worst offensive line in the league. Reports are just horrific. I mean, not even like bad, like they're horrific. It's really difficult to like get behind Patriots players. I think Polk, I think Gibson, I think Stevenson, if you want to go there. I think Douglas, maybe. But it's hard to get behind skill players on the Patriots. We're going to be targeting them every single week to stream defenses against. Right now, a lot of people have asked about a streaming defense for week 1. The Bengals play the Patriots. The Bengals are going to win that game. They're going to probably rack up a lot of sacks, probably get multiple turnovers. chances for defensive touchdowns as well. The other option is Seattle. So Seattle gets to play at home against the Broncos in week 1. Then they play the Patriots in week 2. So target the Bengals, target the Seahawks. Those are also 2 defenses I don't think people are going to rank super highly. So they're going to be available for you in drafts. But we're going to have to drop the Seahawks because they play like the Dolphins and the Lions in weeks 3 and 4. But yeah, big story in England is like the offensive line is so bad. New Orleans. Doesn't seem like their offense is going to do very well this season. I do like Olave. I think his target share is going to be exceptionally high. I think he's a great player. Assuming Kamara recovers from this like back tightness, whatever, I like him too. Beyond that, Taysom Hill, if you play in a league where you can start him at tight end, Shaheed, but he's a better underdog play than redraft. I don't know. I wouldn't be going out of my way to draft Saints players, again, unless it's Olave and Kamara if he's okay. Giants camp. Seemed like we were going to have 2 brutal injuries, but it also seems like it's going to be okay. So Malik Neighbors, he's already practicing after his ankle injury. He's totally fine. And then Tyron Tracy Jr., it seemed initially like he was done for the year. He might practice next week. So he's going to be fine. He does have a more severe ankle injury than Neighbors had, and maybe he doesn't come back next week, but long-term into the season, he's going to be okay. Other than that, not much to report for the Giants. In Jets camp, we don't have much, just more confirmation that Braylon Allen is the clear running back 2. He is an elite handcuff. He's a great stash. So if you draft Breece Hall, I would want to draft Braylon Allen as well, and I go out of my way to do so. If you don't draft Breece Hall, I would still go out of my way to stash Braylon Allen as one of your final picks. I don't know exactly how valuable he'd be, but I can guarantee you if Hall got hurt, he'd be someone we are starting every week, regardless of matchup. And Philly, nothing new. The reports are that A.J. Brown looks great. That's not really news to anyone. He always looks great. In Pittsburgh, also no news. We are waiting on Brandon Ayuk. We are waiting on so many wide receivers right now for contracts and everything. Hopefully Ayuk can figure himself out, kind of decide there. But until we know more for Ayuk, yep, no news in Pittsburgh. That translates over into San Fran. Still waiting on Ayuk. Other news is it seems like Jordan Mason's going to win the number 2 job, but it also seems like if he wins that, they like Elijah Mitchell so much. So like, let's say McCaffrey, suffers a setback in the calf injury and misses a month. Okay. Don't want it to happen, but let's say it does. And let's say that Elijah Mitchell returns from this hamstring injury. Before, you would have one guy. You would have Elijah Mitchell just dominating. Now, it seems more likely, given how good Jordan Mason has played, they would split. I still think Mason's the one you want because he's the healthy one right now and he's looked incredible, but know that it's probably not just going to be Jordan Mason as a featured running back. Assuming at least someone else is marginally healthy, it would be still a split, which wouldn't be as good. But he's the one you'd want as a handcuff. In Seattle, Lockett missed practice with leg injury. I have no other news other than that. I don't know how long he'll be out. I don't know if it's anything to be concerned about, so check up on that. But also reports in just general before that out of the Seahawks camp has been that Metcalf's been awesome and that JSN, it's been very difficult for defenses to guard him. Those are the 2 I'm going after. I wouldn't say I'm going after Metcalf super aggressively, but I draft him a lot in the early rounds. But JSN's the one I want a lot of this season. In Tampa Bay, exact same as last week. Bucky Irving, Jalen McMillan, they continue to look great in camp. Irving, locked in running back 2, going to see touches in week 1. McMillan, locked in wide receiver 3, going to see touches in week 1. Both are great late round picks. In Tennessee, Pollard, Spears continue to split in this 50-50 role. Ridley having a great camp. Burks playing well because Hopkins is out. He's getting a little bit more run. I don't think we need to really go after Treylon Burks. It's nice to see him playing well, of course, but I don't think we need to be drafting him. I still like Ridley. It's going to be a very pass-heavy offense. Obviously, it's Will Levis, so we don't 100% know how good this offense is going to be, but they're going to throw the ball a ton, and so as long as Will Levis isn't terrible, I think Ridley's going to have a really strong season. I'd be good drafting him. And I'm flag planting again. Spears over Pollard this season, even straight up. ADPs are moving together, but still on average, Pollard goes around ahead of Spears. But if we do get to the point where they're going identically, they're going right next to each other in drafts, and you just straight up have to pick one of them, I'm still drafting Tyjae Spears. Then finally, for the Commanders, Ben Sinnott, better as of late. So terrible reports to open camp, wasn't playing well. He's been playing a lot better. And then other reports are Brian Robinson is getting a lot of hype. He's playing really well. They're hyping him up in the receiving game as well. Sinnott still has Ertz to compete with, and Ertz is going to have a role this season, even if he's 100 years old, even if he runs like 1 mile an hour, he's going to have a role. And then Robinson, even if he's the one over Eckler, is still going to have Eckler stealing touches. And then, of course, Jaden Daniels as well, being a mobile quarterback, stealing rushing touchdowns there. So I wouldn't say I'm excited about any of those players in the Commanders. If I was looking to attack this Commanders offense, like if you think their defense is bad, they're going to run a ton of plays, and you're like, I want exposure to this offense, it is Jaden Daniels, it's Terry McLaurin. Those are the two players that I would be focusing on. You can sprinkle in the running backs if they fall past their ADP, need a running back. I'm totally fine taking either one of them. For the most part, I'm targeting, again, Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin in this offense, and not Jahan Dotson. Jahan is not having an amazing camp. They're already talking about like trying to figure out who the wide receiver 2 is going to be. If you can't earn the wide receiver 2 job over like Luke McCaffrey and Diami Brown and like Olamide Zaccheaus, it's not going to work out for Jahan Dotson this season unless we get some different reports. Please do not draft him. So those are the biggest takeaways for every team over the last week. If you watch this far, please leave a like. It really helps me out. And if you're new here, welcome. Dropping a new video every day. Why not subscribe? It is all completely free. That, my friends, is the end of this one. Catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching.